In 1978, Chaosium released a new game called RuneQuest, which was destined to become one of the most influential role-playing games of all time. We are going to tell in very brief detail its story today. First of all, thanks for watching, and if you'd like to help support Ardwulf's Lair, please check out the Patreon and merch store links in the video description. This is not the first edition of RuneQuest, and it is actually not the second edition of RuneQuest either. The first edition was released in 1978, followed in 79 by a second edition, which this is a replica of. This is what is now called RuneQuest Classic, and you can still get it, I think, in a print-on-demand format directly from Chaosium. And I haven't bought this. I bought this from them at Origins, but this is a reproduction, pretty much straight reproduction, of RuneQuest's second edition. There's a number of interesting features of RuneQuest. For one, it contained the role-playing game hobby's first really mature skill system. Other games, including one of my favorites, Traveler, had certainly hinted at a full skill system, but RuneQuest really did it and really gave you real rules for action resolution using that skill system. RuneQuest does not have experience points. Instead, you increase your skills by actually using them. And you do that by rolling against the skill such that it becomes more difficult for the skill to increase the higher your skill level. It is a percentile-based roll low system, and now sometimes is described as the D100 system. This was the genesis of the Chaosium basic role-playing system, which formed the basis of most, if not all, of their other RPGs, including Pendragon, Ringworld, Call of Cthulhu, Stormbringer, and whichever ones I can't remember at this exact moment. But it all started here with RuneQuest. One of the other interesting things about RuneQuest is its built-in world of Glorantha. Now, in this second edition, it is assumed that you are playing in Greg Stafford's world of Glorantha, but the system isn't really tied especially tightly into that in this second edition. RuneQuest was quite popular in its day. In some regions, including the UK, it was the number 2 game, second only to D&D. However, by the early 80s, Chaosium had decided that they were not able to leverage the popularity of RuneQuest sufficiently on their own, so they partnered with Avalon Hill to produce the third edition game. This is not the original version. The original version was a boxed set or one of a number of different box sets that were available. This is a later perfect bound printing that contains the entire thing. The third edition added some rules, most notably an entire new magic system in sorcery, and made some other rules modifications, but the heart of the system is absolutely the same. More importantly, however, and less popularly, it divorced the Glorantha setting from the rules themselves. Although Avalon Hill did quite a bit of Glorantha material over the years, the core rules themselves are set by default in sort of a generic mythic Earth, a fantasized version of our own medieval and ancient Earth. Now, I think this was fairly effective, and there were some supplements specifically for mythic Earth that I think were very good, but the hardcore RuneQuest fans certainly did not appreciate Glorantha being divorced from the system. I personally, on the other hand, started with this third edition and had no problem with removing Glorantha from it at all. In fact, I thought this was an incredibly useful, generic, and universal fantasy rule system, and I still feel like that to this day. And I think this Avalon Hill edition is still a very good game. We played this back in the day and enjoyed it tremendously. It helped highlight in our minds all of the various deficiencies that we imagined at the time that D&D had and that a game like RuneQuest lacked. However, with the demise of Avalon Hill, so went away the RuneQuest 3rd edition. There was a new game called RuneQuest Slayers, which was completely dissimilar from any existing RuneQuest and really had nothing to do with it except the name, and that passed into oblivion when Avalon Hill was acquired by Hasbro. The license kicked around for a few years, and the licenses for Glorantha and RuneQuest became separated, and RuneQuest was eventually picked up by Mongoose Publishing, who did this edition. A lot of people who are suspicious of Mongoose Publishing have valid reasons for being so from this specific era. This edition of RuneQuest is almost universally considered to have been bungled. Many important core aspects of the system were left out of this core book. This is a quite slim 120-ish page core book, and those of us who had played RuneQuest before were pretty dissatisfied with Mongoose's edition. Even Mongoose, however, seemed to have identified that their edition had problems and eventually did a Mongoose 2nd edition, which I do not have and cannot show you, which did clear up most of the problems. However, by that time, Mongoose had also decided that their RuneQuest license wasn't really going anywhere and was allowed to lapse. It is still in existence with Mongoose as a game called Legend. One of the cool things that Mongoose did was they released the RuneQuest rules under an open license, so you can actually design your own D100 based game now. The authors of the Mongoose 2nd edition, meanwhile, acquired the license to produce RuneQuest and released their own edition under license as the design mechanism. And this is the RuneQuest 6th edition. We are here counting the 2 Mongoose editions as the 4th and 5th editions. And here in RuneQuest 6, the power of RuneQuest as a toolkit-style fantasy RPG system is fully in evidence. It adds quite a lot of new detail. It fleshes out a number of subsystems, and it cleans up a lot of the nomenclature that had become unclear over the course of previous editions of the game. I am incredibly happy with this 6th edition RuneQuest. The bad news is that eventually the license ran out, it expired, it wasn't pulled, and it was recovered by Chaosium, who are producing a new edition of RuneQuest, which reincorporates Glorantha. And that is the brand new, well, not brand new, it's a couple years old now, is this new RuneQuest role-playing in Glorantha. This is the same great system, but it has even more tightly integrated Glorantha into that system than ever before. It is a nice, big, fat, beautiful book from Chaosium, and if you intend to play in Glorantha, not using a more narrative-focused engine like HeroQuest, then this is absolutely the edition that I would be pointing people to. However, those of us like myself who really loved RuneQuest 6 as a toolkit for fantasy role-playing, we're happy to see that the design mechanism has released their own game called Mythras, which is essentially exactly the same game with very minor changes and some terminology changed to remove some of the more proprietary RuneQuest terminology. But this is essentially exactly the same game as the RuneQuest 6th edition that Design Mechanism had done before. Now, the Mythras core book is available in a couple of different ways. You can, of course, buy it electronically through DriveThruRPG, among other things. You can get a print-on-demand copy that comes from Lulu, from Amazon. That is what this is. However, I do not recommend you buy it in that way. Buy the soft cover. The soft cover is totally fine. Buy the PDF. The PDF is totally fine. And if you order a print-on-demand copy from DriveThruRPG, it should come from Lightning Source and not Lulu. The problem with the Lulu edition is I got it out of the box, said, awesome, this is great, opened it, and the spine cracked instantaneously. Very displeased with that, especially considering the really high quality that Design Mechanism had brought to the 6th edition hardcover, which is a really, truly massive book. I mean, it's 500 and some pages, it's beautifully bound, it feels great, the art is great, and it is even the same cover art, in fact. So I think if you are looking for a general toolbox for fantasy role-playing games, it's hard to go wrong with Mythras. Hopefully you found this video instructive, enlightening, or at least entertaining. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, or if you'd like to see future content from the channel about Mythras or RuneQuest. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, happy gaming.